Support Name Explain on Patreon for ad-free videos, exclusive podcasts and blog posts, and to help choose what names get explained. Click the link in the description. It's been almost 5 years since I started making videos on Name Explain, and in that time we have covered all kinds of names. Most noticeably, however, we've looked into the names of countries, whether that be videos dedicated to entire nations or a collection of nations' names that share similar etymologies. Perhaps the part of the world we have looked into the most is my home continent of Europe. Most of the nations in this continent I've covered in some way or another, so I thought it would be great if I could compile all these etymologies I've covered over the years into a single video. And quick side note, I've also compiled all this information into a poster/map that is available for purchase, a Name Explain guide to Europe. There will be a link to purchase this map down in the comments, and it's a great way to help support the show. However, a few ground rules before we begin. There's a lot of names to cover here, so they're only going to be very brief etymologies. As mentioned, some of these have been covered in way more detail in the past, and I'm happy to cover some more in detail in the future. So if you want more details on how exactly one of these nations got their names, I'm sure you'll find a deeper dive on the names somewhere on the channel. Also, if things start to sound a little repetitive, there's a reason for that, and that's because most countries in Europe are named in one of 4 ways. They're either named after a tribe who lived there, a geographic feature of the land, a directional description, or a person of importance, though this isn't the case for all of these nations. And that begs another question: what countries will I be covering? Europe's boundaries are sometimes not that clearly defined. For this video, I'm going to nations mentioned in Wikipedia's list of European countries, so if you're angry with a nation I cover, don't blame me, blame them. This includes some micronations/city-states like Vatican City and Monaco, as well as nations that are only partially in Europe like Turkey, Russia and Kazakhstan. We will also be going in alphabetical order, starting with Albania. This is the first of many nations we'll cover that is named after ancient residents of the land, in this case being the Albanoi, with their name possibly coming from ancient words for hill and white, which makes sense as the nation is covered with snowy white hills and mountains. The tiny nation of Andorra, nestled between France and Spain, has a name meaning shrub covered land, due to the landscape here being rather covered in shrubs, while Armenia is also believed to be named after the Armenian people who founded the nation, with their name possibly coming from a man called Amaraniak, a descendant of Armenia's legendary founder, Hayek the Great. Austria might seem pretty central in Europe, but its name actually means Eastern Kingdom. This is because it was named in relation to the nation of Germany, and Austria is of course east of Germany. Azerbaijan's name is thought to come from the Ashlopates people, but we aren't sure how they got their name exactly. One idea is that their name means fire guardians/worshippers, as they worshipped fire. And as for Belarus, well, this name means land of the white Rus, with the Rus being a group of people from Scandinavia who also named another country we'll talk about later. It's thought that these Rus were white either because of their skin tone or because of their religion, and white is a colour often linked to religion. Belgium is named after the Belgae, a mixed Germanic and Celtic people. However, their name is thought to mean things like to swell up with anger or fury, so don't upset a Belgian person, it's in their name to get angry. Bosnia and Herzegovina is a single nation with 2 names. The Bosnia part of the name comes from the river Bosna, while the Herzegovina part of the name is thought to mean Duke's country, as this land once belonged to a duke. When these 2 land areas became a single nation, they just stuck these 2 names together instead of creating a new one, and it was the Bulgars who named Bulgaria, with the Bulgars name believed to be mixed, as the people who became the Bulgars came from a mix of Turkish and Finnic origins. Croatia is named after the Croat people, with their name thought to reference the mountains that run across the nation. The island nation of Cyprus, however, isn't named after a group of people, but is rather named after a type of tree that has grown on the island, that being the cypress tree, though other ideas include the name coming from another kind of tree and even an old word for copper. And as for Czechia, it's named after the Slavic Czech people, who were in turn named after their legendary founder, simply called Czech. Denmark's name comes from the Danes who live here. However, the latter part of this name, Mark, is a Danish word meaning border. It literally means the land bordered by the Danes. Estonia's name is thought to come from one of 2 origins. It may refer to the Esti people, whose name means waterside dwellers, as Estonia is by the sea. However, the name is thought to also possibly come from old Germanic roots and mean east, which makes sense as Estonia and the Baltic as a whole is east of Germanic speakers. And the name Finland comes from the Finns, the people who live here, with Finns thought to mean things like fine/check check relating to their hunter-gatherer lifestyle, but we aren't 100% sure on this etymology. France is named after the Franks, an ancient Germanic people who once lived within the land. Their name is thought to come from multiple etymologies. Some think it relates to the type of throwing axe called a Francisca that they used, while others think it comes from an old word meaning to be free. This is also where we get the term to be frank from, as being frank means we are speaking freely. One idea is how Georgia got its name derives from St. George, and that this name was bestowed upon the land by Christian crusaders. It would explain why the Georgian and English flags are so similar. As for Germany, while this country has many names in many languages, the name Germany was given to it by Julius Caesar. He named it this as the people he dealt with in the land were called the Germani. Greece too is a name that comes from Roman origins. The Romans called this land Glachia, which may either come from a character in Greek mythology called Glachios or the ancient Greek town of Glea. We aren't too sure. Hungary was named after the Huns who settled the land, but we don't seem to know where their name came from. And Iceland has one of my favourite national etymologies. The story goes that when Vikings started to settle this land, they didn't want too many people coming over, so they named it Iceland to conjure up a cold, unpleasant, icy image in the minds of others that would deter people from settling there. Ireland is named after the goddess Iru, who is seen as the human representation of the nation. This naming is much more clear in the nation's Irish name of Ir. Despite being known for the Romans and their language of Latin, Italy's name is thought to derive from another language from the peninsula, Oscan. It may come from their word Vitulu, meaning land of young cattle, as the southern tip of the nation was rife with cows, so the entire nation eventually adapted and adopted this name. Kazakhstan is once again named after a tribe there, the Kazakhs, whose name is thought to come from words meaning things like free and nomad. While Kosovo might be debated as a nation, the origin of its name isn't. It means field of blackbirds, which references a battlefield from a medieval battle in these lands. Latvia is named after the Latgalian people, but we don't seem to be too sure as to where their name comes from. And the tiny nation of Liechtenstein has a name that means a light stone, which derives from a castle in Austria called Liechtenstein Castle, which is, you guessed, made from a light coloured stone. Lithuania simply means shoreline, which is odd as it has the least shore of all three Baltic states. Luxembourg is a little nation, and its name even hints towards this, with it meaning little castle in German. How cute. What's even smaller, however, is the island nation of Malta. This sweet nation has an equally sweet name. It comes from the Greek meli, which means honey. This is due to a popular kind of honey only produced on the island nation. The nation of Moldova is named after the river that runs through it, the Moldova River. This river's name is thought to come from ancient roots, meaning things like dark and black. I guess the waters in this river aren't too clear. Monaco is pretty darn small, and once upon a time there was just a single house there, and this is why the name means place of a single house. It comes from Greek, and apparently this single house was a temple to Hercules. And Montenegro's name is surprisingly literal once you take a look at it. It means black mountain, as one of the mountains in this nation was thickly forested and looked black to the human eyes, so the nation was named after this black mountain. Somewhere not as mountainous is the Netherlands. It's quite the opposite in fact, so much so that the nation is named after how unmountainous it is. The name the Netherlands simply means the lowlands, simply because how flat and low so much of the nation is. North Macedonia is a nation to the north of the Greek region also called Macedonia, with this word meaning tall people / highlanders. And Norway simply means the North Way, due to its location in Northern Europe. Poland simply means the land of the Poles, with these people having a name that means field, I guess in relation to the fields of the nation. Portugal is a name of mixed Roman and Celtic origin. Calais was a settlement set up by the Celtic settlers, named after one of their gods, and when the Romans got there they built a port in this settlement, so they gave it the name Portus Cael. Eventually this was corrupted into Portugal as it is today, and unlike Italy, Romania is actually named after the Romans as they settled in this land, which also explains why Romania is a Romance language speaking nation in the midst of a sea of Slavic speaking nations. As hinted at, Russia is named after the Rus people too. These Rus people came from Scandinavia and would have rowed to the lands named after them. That's why their name is believed to mean the men who row. The tiny nation of San Marino within Italy was founded by Saint Marinus, so it's unsurprisingly named after him. And Serbia once again comes from the Serb people who live here, and their name is thought to simply mean man. Slovenia and Slovakia are both seemingly named after the Slavs, an ethnic/linguistic group that populates so much of this part of the world. We don't seem to know where the word Slav comes from, however, and as for Spain, it comes from the Latin Hispania, which is thought to possibly mean island of hyraxes, despite the fact that it isn't an island and hyraxes don't live here, but rabbits do, and they looked similar enough to garner the name. Sweden is seemingly too named after its residents of the Swedes, though other ideas is that it comes from a compound of Swedish words meaning our kingdom. Switzerland is named after just one of its regions, its central Schwyz canton. However, we don't seem to be sure as to how this canton got its name. And as for Turkey, well, it's once again named after people, the Turks, with their name thought to possibly mean things like strength or barbarian, or even beautiful stranger. Ukraine's name is simple to explain, it just means borderland, as it borders the neighbouring Russia, and the two nations have something of a shared history. The United Kingdom is simply that, a collection of kingdoms that united to form one nation, though those kingdoms do still have some independence. And finally we have the tiny Vatican City, which is a nation completely within Rome. Its name is thought to come from old words that mean soothsayer and prophecy, due to the religious importance of the small nation. And that's how the nations of Europe got their names, from the huge Russia to the tiny Vatican City. And while these nations all have their own unique images and cultures, it's surprising just how similar many of their etymologies are. I guess the question I'm left asking myself is, what continent next? Thank you to all my patrons who support Name Explain on a monthly basis. Patreon is vital to Name Explain, and donating just $2 a month allows you to enjoy ad-free videos and bonus Patreon exclusive content. It also allows you to help choose what names get explained in upcoming videos, and gets your name here with all these awesome people. Thank you so much for all the support you guys give Name Explain. Hello all, and thank you so much for reaching the end of the video. Check out another video and subscribe to stay in the loop on all things Name Explain. You can find me on Twitter, I'm at NameExplainYT. On Instagram, I'm also NameExplainYT, and on Facebook, just search Name Explain. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and once again, thank you all so much.